or the East-West Shrine game, we will be down there for the entire time that our client is down there, practicing and preparing for the All-Star game. People don't realize that a lot of times, or actually every time you have an All-Star game, like a Senior Bowl, annual scouts and representatives that attend, they will watch every practice very, very intently. But as the week progresses, and as you go from Monday practice, Tuesday, Wednesday, you get closer to game time, by the time the game actually takes place on Saturday, almost every scout, every NFL team rep will have left. They put a premium, an emphasis on practices, how players practice, and that's how players can really improve their draft status, their stock. It's not necessarily the game itself, it's the practices leading up to the game. So what we do is when we're down there, we network. We're very fortunate to have solid relationships with decision makers in all 32 NFL teams at all different levels, whether they be scouts, coaches, personnel directors, GMs, and we're there just networking and pushing our guys. A player, what a young man will do on the field, what he's done on the field in between the white lines on Saturday afternoons, in practices at these All-Star games, how he works out at the combine, that will ultimately determine where he's drafted and where he's evaluated and where teams grade him. But our job is to make sure that teams have the most accurate, current information on these players, these clients of ours. And we're very tenacious in making sure that we make sure that this information is out there and that they understand fully that they have the most accurate information upon which they can perform their evaluations.
When you sit down with the deal maker for an NFL team, do you bring your client along, or do you keep your client out of the room?
Typically, no. Our clients, when they sign with ETL, as the chief negotiator for the company, they realize, they entrust their contract, that portion of the business to me. And that is a tremendous responsibility, and I take it very seriously. So in terms of being in the actual room when the negotiation takes place, they really don't see the need to be there. But what I like to do is during the course of a negotiation with a team, I'll always keep the client in the loop as to what is being discussed, what are the major points of contention, what we're still working out, why I want to push for this type of language, why I want this clause taken out, why I want to structure, this incentive this way, or, why a split language needs to, why I want to have a void clause in the split language, just give some reason behind things I'm asking for so the client understands. And, just keeping the client abreast about what's going on. That's the important thing, but they're typically not in the room.
Once a guy inks a deal with his NFL team, I noticed at ETL Associates you actually highlight some of the amenities that the league offers to players. And here we are in New York. It's a sad situation with Plaxico.
Right.
Having the gun. But you go into some of the detail of what they offer. Now, NFL security. Can you talk about what will be offered to a player with regards to security issues?
If a player has, the unfortunate circumstance of having an issue arise, with security or having the need, they can call NFL security. And in every NFL city, NFL security has hired, a former chief of police, somebody with extensive legal experience to take charge of the matter, coordinate with local law enforcement, provide whatever support is necessary to rectify the situation and provide the player with the comfort and security he needs. It's a serious issue nowadays. I mean, you see it all over the website about players being robbed, their homes being burglarized while they're away at games. And, there was an article, I think a couple years ago on ESPN, where they really are targets. They're high-profile, visible celebrities, where, the general public knows exactly how much money they're making. And the NFL has done a tremendous job of putting security in place, putting infrastructure in place to really protect these players and offer them more security than the average person would need in the performance of their daily job.
There are players that I can think of that sign big deals, and then along comes their posse, their friends, their family, and an athlete's career is only 3, maybe 5 years.
Right.
And what happens after post-career? Sometimes, how do they prevent having a hole in the pocket, so to speak? What steps do you take?
It's a two-pronged approach. The first thing that we do when we have a client sign his first contract is, we set up interviews. We have a handful of financial advisors that, we have screened out. We've basically acted as a filter. First of all, they're going to be people who are competent in their job. We want to see a history of solid performance, a rate of return on investments. And I tell our guys, you don't want to have to hit a home run, because there's an inverse correlation between risk and reward. And because you're making so much money, but it's a finite window, you want to make sure that there's some preservation built into the investment model. So, the financial advisors with whom we work, they understand this. Once we set up the interviews and our players pick the right, financial advisor to take care of their finances, we make sure that they stick to the plan. We act as fiduciary. Mm-hmm. We make sure that the investments are being monitored and the account is performing as it should. And this will go on throughout the course of a client's career. Now, while this is happening, to transition our clients for life after football, we do something called post-career counseling. We sit down with the client, and some of the guys, when they're young, they've been so blessed to play the game. It's hard to look. Even when I knew I was going to law school, but I had friends of mine in college that were graduating with a bachelor's degree in marketing or communications. They had no idea what they were going to do next. And you can imagine a young man making substantial income first year out of college playing professional football. That's a topic that probably eludes a lot of them, to look that far in the future about life after football. But we try to bring that to the forefront while they're playing. Use the off season as a vehicle for coordinating internships with for them in various industries, or even having an initial conversation with them to really figure out what they want to do once they're done playing the game. And the best part about being an NFL player is that you can leverage your status, as an NFL player. You can put that on your resume. Mm-hmm. So even if you apply at a financial services firm or an accounting firm or an advertising firm, that'll automatically stand out. It's just the society we live in. As an NFL player, you can really use that status to help you, get your foot into a second career. But we really try to have our clients prepare themselves while they're playing, for the next step. And so there's self-preservation, there's preservation and growth of the money while they're playing, but at the same point in time there's transitioning, figuring out what they're going to do once football is over. Because, if you play 10 years in the NFL, that's an extremely long career. Mm-hmm. But you look at how old a 10-year veteran is when he retires, you're looking at a 32, 33-year-old guy, and not many people in this country can retire at 32, 33. Yeah. And that's when a lot of us are getting started.
Yeah. What about athletes who out of college who don't get picked in the draft? What can be their possibilities with the NFL?
Well, players that don't get picked, teams will sign. It varies from team to team, but teams will sign a substantial number of undrafted free agents after the draft. And these are players that were not drafted. They're free agents. They're free to sign with any team. Teams will want to fill up their rosters going to training camp, with their 80 player limit. So, we've had situations where we've had players not get drafted that, we thought would get drafted. The draft is a very unpredictable event. Every year you have players that you think are going to get drafted and drafted relatively high that don't get drafted. And then you have players out of nowhere that, end up getting drafted and you're like, who's that, So we always have to prepare for the worst. And so what we do is going into the draft every weekend, or every draft weekend, we have a list of teams. We have depth charts at every position. We have, contracts, number of years left on contracts. We also have performance, statistical performance for every position. So if we're looking at, for example, if we're representing a defensive back, we want to see how every team in the NFL ranked in pass defense, and we'll have that information at our fingertips during the draft. The rationale being, at the end of the draft, if we have a team that ranked dead last in the NFL in pass defense, wanting to sign our player as an undrafted free agent, we think, the opportunity is probably going to be better with this team because the pass defense was so porous the year before as compared to a team that was number one in the NFL in pass defense. And the same thing goes true, with the depth chart. If you have a team, let's say, that has 3 safeties on their roster, and they want to offer our client a contract as an undrafted free agent as a safety, where he would be the 4th safety, that's a better situation than a team that has 5 safeties on the roster, where he would be number 6. So there's a handful of variables that we examine, but we always go into the draft prepared that may be the case.
They say that baseball is the national pastime, and football is America's passion. Can you watch football, whether it be on a Saturday or Sunday?
Absolutely. That's part of the reason why I find myself in this industry, is that I'm a huge football fan, and I have to give a lot of credit to my wife too, because on some of these trips to the warmer weather, higher profile locales.
Smart woman.
Yeah,
she goes with you, right?
She comes with me.
Okay.
She comes with me, and she has sat through a lot of football games this fall, a lot of college football games, and some of which haven't been the most glamorous games, but games in which I have a player that I'm recruiting. So she's been along. She's been great, very supportive. So, I love football. Watching football, I can't sit through 9 innings of a baseball game. I just can't. Unless it's the World Series and the Yankees are winning, then that's a different story. But during the regular season, I can't sit through 9 innings of a baseball game. But for football, whether it be a small college playing, on the Yankees network, or it's an SEC matchup or an NFL game, I can always watch, a football game. It's a tremendous opportunity. It's such a great sport.
Are there certain organizations that are more progressive than others in the NFL?
I would say, I don't want to get myself in hot water.
Well, you know what? I got another question. Yep. There's so much information at ETL Associates. I'm just curious. I don't want to short any of your clients. Is there anyone else that you'd like to point out, so when viewers go to etlassociates.com, they should click on?
We represented the #1 fullback in the draft last year. A gentleman named Tony Fiammetta. He's now the starting fullback for the Carolina Panthers. He was the #1 fullback drafted last year from Syracuse. A quality young man. He's making a mark for himself down in Carolina his rookie season. Mackenzie Bernardo is another client of ours, also with Carolina. He's now starting at offensive guard. Due to an injury, he's now the starting offensive guard for the Carolina Panthers in his second season. Mac was the first player ever drafted from Bentley College, which is a Division II school up in Waltham, Massachusetts. They had never, ever had an NFL player, a player drafted by an NFL team, and Mac was the first back in 2008. So it was kind of ironic because we had Mac and Spoon in the same draft class, Brian Witherspoon, and they were both from D2 schools, but both very talented athletes, very hard workers, very driven, very hard working, and it all paid off for them in the end because they're both playing on Sunday afternoons now, realizing their dreams. We also have Mike Richardson, who's from my alma mater, a former Notre Dame player, who's starting as the nickelback for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's found a home in Kansas City. I was down in Jacksonville a couple weekends ago when the Chiefs played the Jaguars. I saw Mike, saw his family at the game, and it was great to see him really enjoying the sport. And he looked great out there. I may be a little bit biased as a client of mine, but I thought he looked really good in pass coverage, and I think he's found a home in KC. Now, hopefully that they turn the season around a little bit, but they had a win last weekend, so hopefully it starts to really move for them.
Well, Eugene T. Lee, pro football agent and dream maker, I just want to thank you for taking us beyond the game today, and hope you come back for an encore presentation.
Thank you very much, John. Take care.
And thank you for sharing this time with us. This is Johnny V saying take care and see you soon.